Hello paper crafters, I'm Sunny Sky and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. And today I want to show you how to make this fun, cute quilt card. So this uses several squares and you're going to cut most of them up into triangles. And I want to show you a couple of other of the same pattern that I've done with some different papers. So if you've got extra designer series papers laying around, these are a great way to use up those little scraps. And I did a variation on this one where I used those same squares and I kind of had them together and where they're sort of coming out and separating, getting a little farther apart. I don't like it as much as the quilt card, but it was kind of fun to do something a little different. So the paper that we're going to use today is this paper here. This is the Pop of Pink Designer Series paper. And one tip that will really help you do a great quilt card is to use your grid paper. This is what I use as the background, but I just cut out a 4-inch square of the grid paper, and you can see that I have put adhesive. I've just run my Snail adhesive along the whole square of cardstock so that it's covering most of it. You also could use a liquid adhesive for this card as well, but that's what I chose to use. Was I'm used to the tape adhesive, the tape runner, and I like it. So to do this card you need 4 different patterns. And you can use the reverse sides of the same pattern, but you'll need 2 of one, 2 of another, 4 of a third design, and 8 of a fourth design. These are all 1-inch squares. And you can see here that the ones that you're just using 2 of, those are going to be in the center of your pattern. The one that you're using 4 squares, that's going to create your stars, and the 8 squares makes your outside corners. And you are going to cut each square into half at an angle to create triangles, except for 4 of the outside corners. You can just leave those as squares, but all the others you're going to cut into half into triangles. So I have cut all of the squares into triangles except for 4 of the pattern that we had 8 of to start with. Now, some people start from one corner when they're working on their quilt pattern. Some people start from the outsides and work in. I like to start from the center. I feel like I can angle it a little bit more. So this is a 1-inch square and the grids come, there's 4 to 1 inch. So that's how I can find my center. 4, 4, okay, I did a good job guessing on my center there. And I'm just going to line up the triangles with the grid. Now my background grid paper here is a little bit sticky because I have all of that adhesive all over it. Now one thing that I will caution you about is when you are doing your squares from the middle, we'll just line up our 2 halves of a square there. One thing I do want to make sure that you check when you're doing your squares is you want the points of the squares to be in the center. So you're not lining up where the squares come out of the center together and the other half is outside. You want a bit of each color to be in the center. In order to create this pinwheel look, you need to have the narrow point of the triangle in the center so that you get a bit of both designs in the center. So we'll just continue on around doing this entire center section. You can see some of my squares I haven't cut exactly in half, or they weren't exactly squares, so I'm having to pull those up and reposition them a little bit. In fact, I have some spare squares here. I'm going to have to cut another square. This is a card that takes a little time. It's not difficult, but it does take some time to line up all these squares. And this is where the grid paper really comes in handy. See, don't do it that way. I accidentally almost did it that way. Okay, so there is the center of my pattern. And now I'll begin on the next section of it. So I'm going to start with a corner and go ahead and put one of the outside corners in. And then put my coordinating color. And then what happens in the center here is we're going to fill in these two diagonals of this square here where the triangles meet each other and they form a larger triangle. So that your two that are on the outside sticking straight out, those are going to be the same pattern. One thing you'll notice about the different colors that I've selected and where I've placed them is I've tried to do lighter and darker shades of cardstock. Even though I'm using the same colors, this black is much darker than this white section here. This is kind of a medium tone. If you have a lot of dark ones together, you won't be able to see your quilt design as well. So you want to have a little bit of contrast in the texture or the colors of the pieces that you're putting together. So once you've got all your squares in place, then if it were a real quilt, there would be texture on the quilt of a pattern. So I've just chosen one of my embossing folders that's a swirly design, and I'm making it so that the design part, the thin parts, are in, because if you had your quilt stitched, of course the lines where it's stitched would be in, and in between those would be where it was popped up. So I'm just going to put the embossing folder here, run it through my Big Shot. It's a great way to add some texture without adding any thickness if you're mailing a card. And another nice thing about it is all these little tiny squares, adding that embossing helps just to glue them down a little bit better. So hopefully you can see the texture in there, the swirls. And then you're just going to take this and add it to a full card. I've got a finished one here. And just it says, wishing you a quick and complete recovery. I did this on a full sheet of pink just because of the way that I had done the designs around. And it's actually on a full card of black inside. I just put a place to write on it. But you could also do just a pink card and have it be pink inside as well. So there's that finished one. Here's the first one that I got this idea from. We did this at my Uplines meeting, and that's always a lot of fun to stamp with friends and learn new ideas. And so there are the ones that we looked at today. So thanks for joining me. I hope that you will spend some time crafting today.